Let's pretend the glass has got all soft like gauze so that we can get through. Why, it's turning into a sort of mist now, I declare. Lewis Carroll's looking glass is rather special. On being approached, it dissolves into a kind of mist, allowing a human being, namely Alice, to pass through. This feature is a clue to the kind of mirror that the author had in mind. Instead of reflecting a person back, but in reverse, Carroll's mirror acts as a means of access to a looking glass realm, where the unsuspecting visitor can do things that were not possible in the world they have just come from. Alice is transformed by her passage through Carroll's mirror. She floats down the stairs like a ghostly apparition as she leaves the looking glass house to explore the strange countryside outside. She just kept the tips of her fingers on the handrail and floated gently down without even touching the stairs with her feet. Then she floated on through the hall and would have gone straight out at the door in the same way if she hadn't caught hold of the doorpost. Lewis Carroll, or Charles Dodson in his day job, was a mathematician and a logician. He was also interested in an objective approach to spiritualism and became a founding member of the Society for Psychical Research in 1882, which conducted scientific experiments to test non-material phenomena. It would not be surprising to find both his academic interests and his spiritualist leanings creeping into his stories for children, including Through the Looking Glass, 1871. The curious assaults on Alice's perceptions reflect Lewis Carroll's interest in the limits of the possible. Other members of the Society for Psychical Research were interested in levitation, as for example the eminent scientist William Crooks. Crooks became interested in spiritualism in the late 1860s. He recorded the feats of the Scottish medium Daniel Douglas Home, who lived from 1833 to 1886. We all saw him rise from the ground slowly to a height of about 6 inches, remain there for about 10 seconds, and then slowly descend. A copy of Daniel Douglas Home's book, Lights and Shadows of Spiritualism, 1877, was in Carroll's private library. In Carroll's era, Victorian mirrors and crystal balls were often employed to cross boundaries, to look into the past and the future, like the White Queen, make astrological predictions, or even speak with deceased loved ones. They were also used in art, like this one known as a Claude Lorre mirror, to make a landscape appear slightly blurred as an inspiration for the painter. This mirror was kept in a shark skin case. At one time it was believed to be a scrying mirror belonging to the magician John Dee, Elizabeth I's astrologer and consultant. Another mirror known as John Dee's Looking Glass is now in the British Museum. It is an obsidian showstone of Aztec origin. Chemical analysis has recently shown that the obsidian was probably mined in Pachuca in Mexico. This artifact was brought to Europe soon after the Spanish conquest by the European invaders. Dee must have acquired the mirror while travelling around Europe, possibly when he lived in Bohemia in the 1580s. It has a circular shape and was associated with the deity Tezcatlipoca, whose name means smoking mirror in the Nahuatl language of the Aztecs. As god of rulers, warriors, and sorcerers, he is often shown wearing a circular smoking mirror on his person as a symbol of revelation, premonition, and power. The great magician John Dee lived in an era when magical mirrors were also in use in Europe, particularly black mirrors. So it is not surprising that Dee was receptive to the idea that such a stone could be a powerful doorway to another world. After his death, the stone was owned by the Earls of Peterborough and eventually came into the possession of the historian and antiquarian Horace Walpole, who lived from 1717 to 1797. Walpole helpfully noted its usage on its protective case. The black stone into which Dr. Dee used to call his spirits. On the label, Walpole describes the stone as the devil's looking glass. Dee used the stone to conjure up angels and gain hidden knowledge with the help of fellow conjurer Edward Kelly. Kelly did all his feats upon the devil's looking glass, a stone where playing with him at Bo Peep, he solved all problems ne'er so deep. This verse is also quoted in Halliwell's compilation of popular rhymes, a book in Carroll's library, in the category Game Rhymes, along with a comment, the reader will recollect what Butler says of Sir Edward Kelly, the celebrated conjurer. This entry confirms that Dee, Kelly, and the looking glass were part of common knowledge in Carroll's era. Bo Peep is discussed by Halliwell as a child's game of hide-and-seek. The notion of hidden figures is evident in an ancient form of this game, in which the nurse conceals the head of the infant for an instant and then removes the covering quickly. The idea of conjuring up the dead through a smoking mirror or magic stone may be fundamental to the appearance of various historical figures on Lewis Carroll's chessboard. In the looking glass realm, there are various strange characters moving across a chessboard landscape. On one side of the mirror, they were inanimate figures. On the other, they were first small but alive, and then Alice's own size. The opposing couples like Tweedledum and Tweedledee are in keeping with the chessboard theme that pits two teams of chess pieces against each other. Could Carroll have planted a pointer to John Dee with the word Dee embroidered on Tweedledee's collar? In view of their names, the Contrariwised Twins, Tweedledum and Tweedledee, could be intended to actually epitomise the historical couple, Edward Kelly being the dumb abuser of magical powers and John Dee the respected magician. The angels did not speak to Dee directly, so he was dependent on his fellow magician Kelly, who could also be blamed for predictions that failed to come about. This pair epitomised the contrast between the supposedly valid, Dee's magic, and the false, namely the misinterpretation of what the angels said, by the charlatan Kelly. In the fourth chapter of Through the Looking Glass, several contrasting pairs come to the fore. There are Tweedledum and Tweedledee, who constantly contradict each other. And then a long poem about the walrus and the carpenter is recited, followed by Alice's comment that she likes the walrus best, contradicted by the carpenter, who points out that the walrus ate more oysters. In the Tweedles chapter, Carroll refers to popular paranormal conundrums of his time. Branches of trees brush over each other without the help of human hand to produce strange melodies, a profound challenge to the senses. And she was not even surprised to hear music playing. It seemed to come from the tree under which they were dancing, and it was done, as well as she could make out, by the branches rubbing across the other like fiddles and fiddlesticks. The strange phenomenon of music playing by itself could also refer to the feats of the Scottish medium Daniel Douglas Home. A copy of his book was in Carroll's private library. Home owned an accordion that purportedly made music autonomously. William Crooks conducted experiments to test Holmes' paranormal powers, such as this one with the accordion held with keys hanging down inside a wire cage, while the medium's other hand remained on the table, his feet being pinned down by those of the intrepid researchers. The melody continued. Is there any reason to suppose that John Dee and his history was of significance to Lewis Carroll? Carroll's interest in magical causation is confirmed by his collection of esoteric books, including a first edition of A System of Magic by Daniel Defoe, published in 1727, with John Dee as its frontispiece. This history of the black art examines how to distinguish between holy miracles witnessing to God's interventions on earth and the workings of the devil, a comparison of opposites that continue to worry the religious Victorian mind. Carroll, as a mathematician, would know something about his predecessors of historical importance. Dee not only spoke with angels, but was also the author of the preface to the English Euclid, published in 1570. Notably, Carroll would have been familiar with the preface, as his own mathematical treatises were largely based on Euclid. Following Plato's lead, Dee expounded in his preface on the mathematical nature of God's creative process. Dee conceived of God as a kind of divine digital programmer who assigned a number to everything in the world, especially words. According to Dee, progressive deterioration of the earth since the fall of Adam could be conceived as a slowing down of God's continual numbering. Should God decide to delete a number, this, wrote Dee, would mean that particular thing shall be discreated. Interestingly, Alice, in Tweedle's chapter, risks being discreated if the Red King awakes from his dream. Was this elusive chess piece engrossed in regal mathematics? Whereas in Wonderland, Alice is asleep in her everyday world, and thus presumably dreaming about herself, in the Looking Glass realm she is a figment of someone else's imagination. This person, the Red King, is in turn a chess piece which, or rather who, has come to life. As Alice moves across the board, the life-size, or rather Alice-sized chess pieces emerge abruptly, as if out of nowhere, in keeping with the idea that they have also come alive by passing through a smoking mirror. Who could they be? Time is supposed to be running backwards in the Looking Glass world, according to the red and white queens. When Alice climbs through the Looking Glass, she becomes involved in a warping of the arrow of time. Some of Carroll's Looking Glass characters are in possession of information about the future. The White Queen is capable of clairvoyance. She applies sticking plaster before pricking her finger. If John Dee from the 17th century appears in the form of Tweedledee, who else might be lurking in the Looking Glass world from other eras? When Alice reaches the 8th square of the chessboard to become a queen in her own right, the White Queen recites a telling poem. Take the dish cover up. Ah, that is so hard that I fear I'm unable, for it holds it like glue, holds the lid to the dish while it lies in the middle. Which is easiest to do, undish cover the fish or dish cover the riddle? The firmly glued dish in the White Queen's riddle is revealing. Even today, firmly closed vessels which successfully deny access to their content are known as hermetically sealed jars. The White Queen on the 8th square of the chessboard could represent Maria Profitessa. She was the alleged inventor of an airtight container known as a kerotakis for use in alchemy. Perhaps both Alice books are hermetically sealed? Otherwise known as Maria the Jewess, she lived between the 1st and 3rd centuries AD in Alexandria and counts as one of the founding mothers of esoteric lore. Alice learns on her journey about how her Victorian world, with its technological advances, emerged out of the wisdom gained in past eras. She meets figures from the past who have merged like herself through the magic mirror and is treated to their philosophical outpourings in the context of the debate about causality, science and religion raging among intellectuals known to Carroll. Similarly, the Greek writer Plutarch likened his biographies of memorable figures of antiquity to a mirror. The virtues of these great men served me as a sort of looking glass in which I may see how to adjust and adorn my own life.